In therapy, there's a term we use. I actually believe that the term originated in the way that they use it in therapy from NLP, which is Neuro-Linguistic Programming. Even though a lot of therapists don't respect NLP, a lot was stolen from it. And one of those notions, and I could be wrong about this, but I don't think I am, is the notion of framing and reframing. And framing and reframing has to do with the interpretive structure of my consciousness. That what reality is not given to me. So I'm sitting in this room with the light and the microphone and the camera and several people here, but that's not given to me. That's actually kind of a complex interpretation of what's going on. First of all, I'm inferring that there's a thing called people, there's a thing called light, there's a thing called camera, there's a thing called room. If we go to try to define all of these things, like, well, what exactly is a room and what's not a room? Does it have to have 4 walls, only 3? Have to have a ceiling, no ceiling? Does it have to be built by man, or can it be a natural room, or is that a cave, right? There's a certain interpretive structure that goes into how we interface, understand, and cognize our reality. That's called framing. We frame things in a certain way. The way that we generally think about that in therapeutic terms has to do with what we emphasize in any given experience. So I could have a very scary experience, and when I'm thinking about that experience, maybe in order to communicate it to somebody else later, how I frame that experience is how I hold it. That was very scary. I never, let's say I was on an airplane and there was terrible turbulence. That was very scary. I never want to do that again. That plane could have crashed. I could frame that completely different. It's unbelievable that human beings were able to build these flying machines that take us from one island to another. Now and then that's turbulence. It's very scary, but it's much safer than, even driving in a car or possibly riding a bicycle, right? It has to do with how I frame my reality. So I think that term and the deep understanding of that term is super important. Rabbi Mordechai Finley, who's a great teacher of mine, says something very controversial. I don't think it's an original thought of his, but he says, at a deep level, feelings are choices. It's very weird. Well, what do you mean? Like, feelings is the one thing we don't have choice over. It's like, I don't wake up and choose how I feel. And I think what he's saying is that we have a deep pre-linguistic emotional framing structure that we have a say in every day. I'll say that again, because it's a complicated notion. At a deep level, feelings are choices. We have a deep pre-linguistic, underneath language, framing mechanism that relates to is so deep it relates to the part of us that we would call primitive and emotional, right? The deep brain. And I actually have a say in how that interpretation happens. Jordan Peterson is a controversial figure. I should probably do a video about his journey with Xanax, or at least what they're reporting about it. It makes no sense to me as an expert in that field. He talks, in his book, 12 Rules for Life, about, making your back straight. On one hand, it's kind of a silly piece of advice, like, okay, Grandma, thank you for telling me to sit up straight. On the other hand, what he's saying is how you hold your body changes how you interpret and interface with your reality. It changes how you frame yourself, right? Do I think about myself as somebody who's low confidence and has or am I framing who I am in such a way as to be assertive and to matter in the world? And my posture says a lot about that, right? About how I'm oriented, right? Framing, orientation. And so that notion, however true it is a helpful notion. It's an empowering notion, because it means I have the power, not in any way at all moments, but in some ways, at most moments, to frame what's happening with me. And I'll give one really deep story about this. I was having lunch, and there was a friend of a friend who was there. He was an older gentleman. And we were just kind of chit-chatting, and as we were chit-chatting, it came up that he had a child that died when she was about 12 years old. And he was just talking, so I couldn't like say, oh, my condolences, kind of the normal decorum when somebody says that. And he just kind of kept talking. So when he was finished talking, I said, by the way, I wanted to offer, my condolences. That's just, terrible and tragic. We had been having kind of a deep spiritual conversation. So he kind of pulled me aside and he said, I wouldn't say this to most people, but I think you'd understand. The fact that she passed is not a bad thing. Most people, if I said that, they think I'm crazy, but I think you get it. And he kind of walked me through the experience of her sickness and how she held it, and how he held it, and her passing, and what the experience of her actually passing was like, and that he didn't see it as bad. He didn't frame it as bad. And I don't know that I could do that. I definitely wouldn't want to find out. But it really went, wow, like at some, to me, deep level. Like for this man, it was kind of like at some soul level, this man is in touch with something that he's able to frame it and hold it in such a powerful and good way that if we all could do, the whole world would be a better place. So that's the power of framing. It reaches down in there past the therapeutic into the spiritual.